The question I'm going to ask today, Dad, Papa, is...
The question that we're going to talk about is...
What is the most scared I've ever been? That one leapt off the page for me.
What was my first big trip?
How was the day of your wedding?
I'm going to talk about how I almost died twice in 2 years.
She was telling me her life story, and she didn't know it was me.
That is an absolutely true story.
And I can tell you about it.
Welcome to the Storyworth podcast. I'm your host, Krista, co-founder of Storyworth. I'm so glad you're here. If you're new to Storyworth, we help people write their life stories, the big stories and the small ones. Each week on the Storyworth podcast, we ask questions that help us hold on to a person's life story and get to know our loved ones better. Today, a Kansas and Peruvian father and daughter talk about one of the most important days of his life.
The question I'm going to ask today, Dad, Papa, is how was the day of your wedding?
Hi.
Hi, Papa.
Hi. Pedro and Ana, welcome to the pod.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about yourselves. Like, where do you live? What do you do?
Ladies first.
Love it. My name is Ana. I live in Los Angeles, California. Grew up in Kansas City and was born in Peru. I'm currently still doing the same profession I've been doing for about 15 years, I guess. It's as a professional DJ.
Nice.
So yeah, I DJ for special events and parties and music festivals and clubs and all that.
Well, that's kind of the hippest intro I've heard in a long time. Good for you. Pedro, what about you?
I live in Kansas City and Shawnee, Kansas. I'm retired for the last 9 years. I work in the environmental field doing water quality for 36 years. So now I am here in the house working as much as I can in my garden, my ponds, my chickens, and also playing music.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're a musician. Anna, it makes sense that you really gravitated to music as well.
Yeah.
What kind of music do you play? Do you play an instrument? Are you a singer? What do you do?
I was born in South America. In South America, I learned to play music from the Andes Mountains. They use a lot of wind instruments like pipes and flutes, but I also learned to play the charango version of a guitar. Mm-hmm. And then with the pass of times, I've been learning other instruments, playing bass when I'm needed, or I'm learning right now a little guitar from Mexico, from Veracruz, guitar typical there, jarocha.
This sounds like a really nice retirement.
He works just as much as he did when he was working full time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taking it seriously. That's great.
I was telling my daughter early on that sometimes, I was not home for days, I didn't take that many breaks, I took all the overtime possible because with 4 kids, and my mom and dad on top of that. Mm-hmm. Of course, Cheryl worked too, but...
We should mention Cheryl is your wife.
Cheryl is my wife.
Anna's mother.
Anna's mother for the last 49 and almost 50 years, Next year will be our 50th.
Congratulations. I think that this is actually a perfect setup because as I understand it, you picked a relevant question to talk to your dad about today. Why don't I take it away? Why don't you ask him your question?
Oh, I mean, I think I've always wanted to know the details around this story just because of the circumstances and the little bit of information I've gotten here and there from it. But, you are coming up on your 50th wedding anniversary, and it's obviously a really important year. And I guess the question I have, just because, the one story I know is that my parents did not know each other for very long before they got married. And it was a very quick engagement and a quick marriage. And the circumstances around it made them have to kind of do something pretty quickly, I guess, and where they ended up getting married. But I've always wanted to know the details around your actual wedding day and what led up to it and what happened on your wedding day and maybe what happened the night.
All right, Pedro, what was your wedding like?
Yeah. Let me go back a little bit before the wedding. So you know exactly the reasons why we had to rush, Of course, after being together almost a month, maybe less, I asked her, or she asked me, or we both asked, to marry. And the reason pretty much why we had to rush, it was because in order to stay in South America and Peru, I think in any country, she had to renew her visa. So, since we wanted to be together, I guess this was a quick fix for that. On top of that, we want to, start a life together and everything else,
Where were you when you met?
Actually, I was in a place called the Sacred Valley of the Incas called Urubamba. That's where a lot of history there, a lot of Inca ruins. Machu Picchu actually is in the Sacred Valley of the Incas too. And I saw her one day, when I was sewing my pants, patching my pants.
So you had a hole in your pants?
Yes.
Okay.
And I saw her coming, Then she stopped and asked me if she could help me. I said, sure.
Oh.
The catalyst of the whole thing.
Yeah. What did you think when you saw her?
It was kind of like something like you dream, having a dream girl, like, kind of like goes like that, with the wind blowing on her hair and stuff like that, kind of like.
Oh, it was a slow-mo like montage from a television show. So what did she look like?
Oh, well, she had long hair, blondish, long skirt, sandals like everybody else. It was just after the 60s. So just remember, she was living in San Francisco for a while.
Was she a hippie?
Yeah, and that's actually what it was. My hair was longer than hers, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, really?
It was.
I love this. Were you a hippie? I guess I should ask. I don't really know what the hip movement was like in Peru.
I wanted to change the world, live in harmony and peace, and I want to live in nature. I wanted to learn, about my ancestors because, my parents were from the mountains and they migrated to the city. And I didn't learn that much from them.
You mean culturally?
Like a lot of people, immigrants. My parents were actually immigrants from the Andes Mountains into Lima, the capital. And they wanted for me to be like a city boy, So they didn't even teach me, their language, but they wanted me to fit, in the city. So I grew away from my traditions, So
right.
When I was older, I wanted to learn about it, how to live the way they lived thousands of years ago. And I did.
Sure. Tell me about your courtship. What happens after you there's a lot that I'm sure that happened between when you met on the steps fixing your pants and were saying I do.
I think she invited me one time to her house and she fixed ceviche.
Yes.
And then she made some beans and something. And then I said, that's it. She got me by the food, because I love to eat.
That's wild, Dad. I had no idea that she made you ceviche on your first date because she refuses to eat fish now.
Yeah.
And what's the proposal? Can you set the scene for us?
I remember it was a full moon. I don't know if she remembers. I remember going to this field, with her. And I think I asked her, and she said yes. And I was flying like on the clouds,
Oh, that's so sweet. You're on cloud 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you tell your parents? How did your families react to this very short courtship and sounds like a very short engagement also?
My dad's look in the early 70s was definitely not anything in the States probably looked like.
I don't know. What did he look like? Tell me more.
Oh my gosh, the pictures are amazing. He had this long hair, and I think when they got married too, he had the really long beard. I think one of the funniest stories that I remember hearing from Grandma was that the first photos that they sent back was from their wedding day, and my dad you'd broken your middle finger, right?
No,
Dad?
I was making a spoon that was carved in it.
You're
you know?
whittling? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Of
and
course he was
then I
whittling.
was using a very sharp object, and I just miss, and it went to my finger, the middle finger.
So he bandaged it in a
Mm-hmm.
splint of some kind. So it was all wrapped and it was just the middle finger. So in the photo, he's trying to look really proper, even though he's got this long hair and these ponchos on and sandals.
I love this.
But he wanted to still like kind of stand up straight. And so he has his hand on his chest, but it's just the middle finger sticking out. And there's this man, you can barely see a face behind all this hair, and there's this middle finger, and then my mom's smiling sweetly next to him. And that's the first photo
This
that my
gesture
grandparents saw.
It's like kind of crude gesture, inadvertent.
So funny.
Like that's so
Yeah.
funny. The in-laws weren't at the wedding. Were your parents at the wedding?
No.
No. Okay. So you were getting. Tell me where did you guys tie the knot?
You
were in Peru.
The wedding date, thunderstorms. So I have my poncho. I try to remember. Your mom made a shirt for me, and she embroidered, all the way.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So from your neck down the front, like the
Yes,
button,
yeah.
a parallel
It was
to
so
the like.
incredible, beautiful. With
buttons.
it was a woman with her hair, just going, all over, kind of blowing.
It was like a painting
Yes,
embroidered
kinda
on your
like that.
shirt, basically.
And I had my poncho on top. So we went to the main square, and we wait for the bus to take us to the place where we were going to get married. That was the city hall of a city called Huanchac in Cusco. Get out of the bus and went into the city hall. Of course, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to get married. But it was almost noon, and the guy that was going to get us married was the mayor. He said, guys, it's about 12 o'clock. It's kind of like not siesta time, but it was kind of his lunch time. He said, I had to go lunch, So we said, okay. We waited, for him to get us married almost an hour. And when he came back, he could barely walk. He was soaked,
He was drunk.
He was drunk. He had to hold himself on the sides,
This is the mayor
Yes.
of the town. He was
I
And
love the story. Okay.
and so he proceeded with the wedding, before he got there and said, okay. I tell you one thing, we really have doubts that we got married, because
you weren't sure if it was legal.
Because
he was so drunk.
We didn't know if he spelled, her name right or. Yeah. So we got married, went outside and took pictures, more pictures. And of course, we were very poor, we have almost nothing, We were able to afford a bottle of wine and some popcorn, that was our wedding.
That was their wedding reception.
And Cheryl got too much wine and she fell asleep. So that was our wedding pretty much.
Oh my gosh, I got so much more information than I was expecting. This is so cool. You hear like the stories of your parents like in these snippets throughout your entire lifetime. And, it's now been 4 decades for me. But I always knew about the drunk guy, but I thought it was a drunk guy in the pews. But it was actually the mayor.
It was him.
That was
It was him.
Oh, there
the
was
mayor.
he was the one
the
sleeping.
mayor, the one soaked.
And this is just like one day in your life that just is extremely interesting. And obviously, I would not be here without you guys having done that weird, fun, crazy thing that day.
Yeah.
I was born 9 months later, by the way.
Okay.
Yep. Things got really bad in Peru. We were having all kinds of political unrest there.
They were targeting artists and musicians at the time. And
They stole our stuff all the time, oil to cook, stuff like that.
Jeez.
So it was really, when we came to the States, I had the trauma of protecting everything. we bought some bikes for the kids, and I always wanted to bring them inside, because I thought that somebody was going to take it away, and they told me, nobody takes anything away here. In the neighborhood that we were living, stuff stays there, for a long time,
So you're back,
Yes.
you're married, we think, probably. Did you continue with your music? Like where did you put down roots? Where did you establish yourself?
Pedro had to transform, and Cheryl had to transform their lives into many things. So one day I said, maybe we can start making sandals, shoes, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And
They were beautiful
Nice.
sandals, leather.
Tell me about them. Can you describe them?
Oh, like gladiator sandals.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
An
Okay.
interesting story, I think, with the sandals, because I remember always one of the memories I have from being in Peru before I came to the States was my father always sitting, like pounding leather and carving leather and doing things. But I think one of the funniest immigration stories from when we came to the States was I think that my mom and dad had lived this very like beautiful, like pastoral lives, working with the earth and making beautiful things. And so when they came to the States, they're like, wait, how do we get jobs doing anything here?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I remember, this is me remembering it as like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old girl, was they were like, well, we should figure out a way to do the sandals. But in Midwest Kansas, it's not necessarily like a marketplace for that.
It's not
So
sandal weather
somehow-
year round. Yeah.
But somehow they like discovered the Renaissance Festival, the Ren Fair, like
yeah.
the touring one. So one of my first memories of America is actually us having a little shoe cobbler like stand at the Ren Fair. And they would make
Why
the
not?
sandals. And of course, that was the perfect like audience for these type of sandals. They were like these bohemian leatherwork sandals. But the problem was that we were all these little kids. And of course, my parents couldn't afford like childcare or anything. So we would go with them to the Ren Fair every day. And I will say, if you ever want to disillusion a little child immigrant who doesn't speak English very well and tell her she's in America, but show her America as the Renaissance Festival, like
Yeah.
you get really confused. So I will say, like, I made myself a pretty easy target when I went back to school after that summer. And I was like, oh yeah, America. I'm friends with the King of America, because I was friends with the King of the Red Festival.
Oh, that's funny.
So there's like, that was them trying to assimilate into the United States, but
Yeah.
obviously I think it only lasted for a little while. I didn't think the US seemed that different than Peru at the time, because we were all living outside, it's like dirt roads at the Ren Fair.
Oh
People
my
were
gosh.
eating turkey legs. And it was very similar to rural Peru, I will say. But
Yeah.
I have really enjoyed this little romantic walk down memory lane. Thanks, Pedro.
Thank you, Krista, too.
And Ana for
Yeah.
asking the
Ana.
question. And
Papa, that was so cool.
I know Cheryl's planning a 50th recreation.
Yes.
How literal a recreation? Are you going to renew vows? Are you going to find a drunk mayor? What are we going to do?
Her thought is just recreating the wedding, but of course with more people, not just the two, and dressing up like those times.
Oh, that's awesome.
Can I play the drunk mayor?
No.
That's it for this episode of the Storyworth podcast. I'm Krista Baum. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to get started writing your own book of life stories or want to give the gift of Storyworth to a loved one, head over to storyworth.com. And if you want one of your stories to be considered for the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at storyworth.com/podcast. The Storyworth podcast was produced by the folks at Good Weight Productions. Remember, everyone has a story worth sharing. See you soon.